Clearly illegal under international law, right? No, full stop, UN Charter, no question there. Clearly not legal under the Constitution because though presidents of both parties have argued against this, the Constitution is really pretty clear that the representatives of the people get to be consulted and ultimately approve military activity. That has not happened here at all. Again, there's nothing legal about this.
Bill Barr just dismantled the Democrat narrative on Venezuela in real time. While the left rushed to defend international criminals and lecture Americans about international law, Barr calmly laid out why the case against Maduro isn't just solid. It's stronger than the one that took down Noriega. This is a moment Democrats do not want you to hear.
Well, this is a superseding indictment that adds some detail. It drops some people. It adds some people. It's interesting. It's a very strong case. It has a lot of detail, and the basic allegations are the same as we originally charged in 2020. This was a criminal organization that used the instrumentalities, facilities of the state to make Venezuela a hub of drug trafficking. They were engaged in their own trafficking directly, cocaine up into the United States, both on ships, boats, and aircraft. And they also worked very closely, conspired with, and worked hand in hand with 5 different terrorist and drug trafficking organizations. FARC and ELN in Colombia, Tren de Agua in Venezuela, which was essentially a henchman for Maduro and his group, and 2 Mexican cartels, Zetas and Sinaloa. So it's a very strong indictment. One of the interesting things is one of the people we originally charged, a fellow named El Polo, who's a critical player, had broken with Maduro, was in Spain. He was eventually captured after we indicted him in 2020, and he has now pled guilty just in June. So there's a lot of detail in the indictment that may come from El Polo, who could prove to be a key witness. Just another key point is in 2020, we indicted the general in charge, Padrino. That was in a separate indictment in D.C. I haven't heard anything more about that. There's nothing new about him in the current indictment, which I think is interesting. And then they added his wife and his son and the head of Tren de Aragua. So that's essentially what this case is about. It's a very strong case, a lot of detail. It's a more complicated case, a lot more to it in terms of the direct drug activities, but it's much stronger and a broader case because of the pervasive involvement of this group, this large group, in directly trafficking and facilitating. They were providing government equipment and so forth to different other cartels and so forth. So it's a very strong case. Now, trying Noriega, just getting to trial took 21 months. And then the trial itself, which was under a terrific judge, one of the greatest district court judges in the United States, a fellow named Hoovler, who kept the thing moving, that trial took 7 months. So this is a long process people can strap in, but at the end of the day, there'll be a lot of legal maneuvering. The judge is important as to whether he can keep this thing moving along on a good timetable, but I think he will end up being convicted. Well, first, on the Constitution, he's just wrong. It does not require it for military activity. It requires it for going to war. And we haven't gone to war here. And otherwise, over our entire history, presidents have had a lot of latitude deploying military forces and using force in a targeted way to deal with threats to the United States and to enforce our laws. And this is justified both as a law enforcement measure and as a national security measure. As to international law, it is not a violation of the international law. First, we have never agreed that under the UN Charter, the only time you can use force is when you're actually under attack, armed attack by somebody else. We've never agreed to that, and that's not the only reason for defending yourself. We've always taken the position we can use force to defend our vital national interests, the safety of the American people. So he's simply wrong on that. Furthermore, under international law, we clearly are the victim here. They have been violating international law by using their sovereign territory and their de facto control to conduct hostile activities that are slaughtering Americans. What are we supposed to do? Just sit here and let a narco state act like that. You can't use law enforcement to prosecute them over there and get their cooperation because they are the problem. And so it's like in Panama, this is an appropriate situation where we can enforce our laws by going in and arresting the perpetrator. Brief this, argued it at the time of the Noriega case, and the Supreme Court has been clear. It doesn't matter how he got here. Once he's in front of the court and he's been charged, he stands trial and can be convicted. Okay. So, all these arguments don't really affect his ultimate responsibility and the government's ability to bring this to trial and get a conviction.
What you're watching here is a masterclass in reality versus Democrat fantasy. Bill Barr, a former attorney general who actually wrote the original indictment against Maduro, comes on Fox and calmly explains what the left keeps pretending doesn't exist: facts, evidence, and law. Barr makes it clear from the start that this isn't some flimsy political stunt. The indictment against Maduro is detailed, expansive, and backed by years of investigation. We're talking about a regime that used the full power of the Venezuelan state to turn the country into a global drug trafficking hub. Ships, planes, ports, government equipment, all of it weaponized to pump cocaine straight into the United States. And this is where Democrats get uncomfortable, because Barr explains that Maduro wasn't just looking the other way. His regime worked directly with terrorist groups and cartels: ELN, Tren de Aragua, Sinaloa, Los Zetas. That's not diplomacy. That's narco-terrorism. Then comes Jim Himes and the Democrat response we've all come to expect. He claims it's illegal. He claims it violates the Constitution. He claims international law somehow protects a narco-state actively killing Americans with drugs. Barr absolutely shuts that down. He reminds everyone that the Constitution does not require Congress to approve every targeted military or law enforcement action. That requirement is for declaring war, and we are not at war. Presidents of both parties have exercised this authority for generations to protect American lives and enforce U.S. law. On international law, Barr is even clearer. The United States is the victim here. When a foreign regime uses its territory to conduct hostile criminal activity that slaughters Americans, we are not required to sit on our hands and pretend it's none of our business. That argument is moral nonsense and legal fiction. The comparison to Noriega is devastating for Democrats. Barr explains that the Maduro case is broader, deeper, and more detailed than the Noriega prosecution ever was. And guess what? The courts already settled this question decades ago. It does not matter how a defendant gets here. Once he's in front of a U.S. court, justice proceeds. This is why the left is panicking. They don't want accountability. They don't want enforcement. They want endless process, endless debate, and zero consequences, especially when criminals hide behind sovereignty while poisoning our communities. Barr's message is simple and powerful. America is not obligated to tolerate narco-states. The law is on our side. History is on our side. And unlike Democrats who apologize for criminals, this country still has the right to defend its people. That's the difference between leadership and weakness. And that's why this moment matters.